My name is Shogun. Joining me today for the first time is our new friend Jinx. We have a very interesting conversation today. She said we will discuss demons, dark energy, the Book of Job, media pollution, sensory processing, and bandwidth of consciousness, which all sounds extremely interesting. And I'm also hoping we can discuss a little bit about your experience that you told me and Open Eye about a little bit, involving what might have been a nefarious government experiment of some kind. But we'll get into all of that. Just make sure you've joined us on the Roundtable Discord server. You can find our upcoming events in the announcements channel and our hundreds of great podcasts and special events and interviews and debates in the hashtag RT podcast channel. That being said, welcome, Jinx. Thank you for joining me. How are you, my friend?
I'm good.
Great. So, where do you want to start? Should we go through it in the order of sequence, beginning with demons? Do you want to talk?
Wherever. It doesn't really matter to me. I can talk about the weird being exposed to some kind of chemical.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting. I mean, we'll get into. Well, you know what? Why don't we start with some of your other topics, and then we'll save your personal experience for the end. How does that sound? Or do you want to do it the other way around?
Kind of want to do, like, I'm really nervous, so I kind
Sure,
of want to
100%.
do a little icebreaker, kind of.
Well, that's perfect. Okay, so you were telling me in Open Eye that you had this very strange and traumatic experience. So why don't you just take us through what happened?
So this was in February, and I had a habit of street racing, like, every morning. Like, I would wake up and I would go, like, racing on the highway. And so I was, like, really accustomed to, like, what kind of cars were on the road, like, just really used to the whole environment. And one day there were, like, these weird, like, trucks. They were just, like, they were like dump trucks, but they didn't have, like, the dump truck back to it. It was more like just, like, these metal, like, claws. I don't know how to explain it any more than that. Like, dozens of them everywhere, all over the place, all over the city. I was like, this is super weird. Like, and it actually made me vomit because I just felt like something really bad was gonna happen. And in hindsight, it kind of did, but if I, like, would have stayed in the city, it wouldn't have happened. But so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna leave the city for the day and just kind of get out of here. Like, I just feel like something wrong. There's something wrong. And so I, like, drove out into the countryside, and I'm, like, in the middle of nowhere, like, just surrounded by farms and just, like, roads with, like, trees and, like, there's nothing out there. But there are still these trucks, like, driving past me. Like, one was behind me. And one of them, like, slowed down when it was, like, coming up to me, and it, like, waved at me. The dude waved at me to, like, go back, go back, go back. I was like, what the fuck? Like, fuck you. Like, I'm not going back. I don't know what the hell is going on. So I kept driving, and then I, like, dissociated or something very strange. It's like, I don't dissociate, but I was in, like, one place, and then in the next, like, my vision blacked out. Then, like, my vision, like, came back, and I was, like, driving on the highway again. But there were no regular cars. No regular cars but me. Like, no trucks, no SUVs. It was just me and these trucks. And I was like, oh fuck. And I had my windows rolled down. And I'm just driving, and then over the pine trees, and these pine trees are like 65 feet tall. Like, they're very big pine trees. I see this, like, cloud of dust. Like, I'm talking, like, massive cloud of dust that was, like, yellow. And at first I thought it was pollen. I was like, holy shit, like, how is there so much pollen just coming out of the trees, just a massive cloud? And so I start, like, rolling my windows. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I don't want to have, like, some kind of allergy attack or something. Like some of it like passed over me and some of it got in my car. And my everything that was exposed to it, like my arms and my face, my scalp, my throat, like my lungs themselves started to burn just like on another level. Like it was so bad. And I was like dumping water like that I had with me like all over myself because it was burning so bad. And um so like I pulled over. I like pulled off the highway. 'Cause I had driven for like a minute. I was like, I don't know what's going on. Like I can't drive. So I pull over. I go to a gas station that's like further up from where the dust was. Um and essentially I was like screaming, um, and someone called an ambulance. I'm in the ambulance, I'm passing out. I wake up, I'm screaming, I'm passing out. I'm in the hospital, I'm passing out. I remember them being like, "We don't know what happened. You might die. But we can't give you anything for it." Um, they asked me like how bad the pain was. I told them an 8, but it was like a 10. Like I've never experienced that level of pain before. Um, and then so like I remember somebody like gave me a shot of something. I assumed some sort of painkiller or something. And then I woke up like hours later, and they're like, "Okay, well we're gonna have to hold you in the mental ward here because we want to watch you." I was like, "Okay, I guess so. Like I don't really have a choice." And I was like pretty sick. Like my bowels were just like fucked up. Like I just felt like shit. They gave me like 3 different like of these like serums that came out of a syringe, and they like put it into a cup. They're like, "Okay, well this might make give you like a lot of energy." And I was like, "Okay," and it did. And then they gave me a bunch of like vitamin D supplements, and then when I got discharged, they told me that the government paid for my stay. And ever since then, I've been so traumatized to like drive in my car because I have like some sort of like association with the car and that level of pain. So sometimes I get like weird flashbacks where it's happening again. It was just incredibly traumatizing. I have no idea what I got exposed to. I know it was just some kind of chemical burn, I assume, because it didn't leave like any lasting marks. It like set like my nerves on fire or something. Like I don't know what it like my skin was red in the moment. It didn't leave like any burns. I have like some skin cancer on my arm, like a little tiny bit of skin cancer on my arm since then. So it like must have been some kind of carcinogenic or something that was very bad for me, and I don't know what it was. I haven't done anything about it. I can't really prove anything. Um, it's just all in all like very very scary.
That does sound traumatic and scary and terrible. Looking back on it, what do you think happened? Do you think maybe the government intentionally released some kind of chemical gas to do like an experiment on civilians? Do you think maybe it was an accidental release from some kind of hazardous waste truck or something? Or do you think it was something even weirder than that?
Um, well, I don't think it was like any kind of anything released from a hazardous truck because the way like the cloud of dust was massive, like probably like 100 feet of like dust, like it like spanning like over the trees, and like it wasn't it just too much of it to be from something like that. I honestly think it was planned because of like the trucks were in my city, like the same trucks that were in my city were on the highway with me. I think it was planned. I feel like maybe they were testing some kind of chemical exposure or I I I don't know. It was I just say fuck the government really because they shouldn't be testing out any chemicals or anything like that. Um for all I know, it definitely wasn't Fallout because if I inhaled Fallout, I would be dead. Um but I was thinking something like Agent Orange or for some reason, even though that's a bit outdated to be testing it, especially close to like civilian areas. Um, but it was yellow. It was like it looked like pollen, but there was no fucking way it could have been pollen.
And have you had any residual effects afterwards, or do you feel like you recovered fully from that?
I feel like I'm fine now. I do have like little marks, like skin cancer marks on my arm. Um, they gave the little serums that they gave me. I think they might have been something that like prevents cancer or like extends your telomeres or like repairs them or something like that. Because this was after I started getting like MK Ultra. Um, so I don't really know. I don't know. I
Yeah.
had some weird experiences with like the government. Because I went and stayed in. I was taking a road trip and I stopped in DC in like the middle of the night, like downtown Washington DC, blocks away from the White House, and used this like anonymous app. I was like, "Hey, I need a place to stay. Like, can I sleep somewhere?" And I was like, "It's gonna be safe for me to be there. Like, this is like very highly monitored area." Um, so I went to some dude messaged me. He's like, "Hey, like you can sleep in front of my house if you want to." I was like, "Okay, cool." I drove over there. He got in my car. Me and him start talking. He says that he's like the IT dude for Congress that basically monitors all like the computer use and stuff. I Google his name on like I look up his name on Indeed and it's completely legitimate. Like that's who he was. And he's like, okay, well, I'm actually gonna get you like a government hotel for the night. So we drive to the hotel. He like gets me into the hotel. I log in to my YouTube or something on the smart TV there, and we sit and talk for a little while. Then he leaves. And then ever since then, that was in October of 2020. After that, so like my computer went insane. Lots of like little things happened. Got taken to a psychiatric hospital. Can I talk about this? Is this like off topic?
No, nothing's off topic. This is what's called a member interview podcast. So you are the topic, and we can talk about anything that you want.
Okay, so I like to take road trips. I used to like to drive a lot. So um I decided I was gonna go to Philadelphia for like the weekend or a couple days. And I'm driving. I leave like early in the morning or like actually late at night. I'm driving. I'm in South Carolina and I pull off looking for a gas station and it's like pitch black. Like there are no lights and I'm running out of gas. So, and I know there's a gas station at the next exit, but the next exit was like this weird amusement park. And I figured there would be like drunk people there, and I was like, I don't really want to stop there. I'm just like a young girl by myself in the middle of the night. I didn't feel comfortable, so I figured I would see if there was a gas station off of this exit. So I turn off. It's completely pitch black. I'm like, well, if I run out of gas here, it's more dangerous than running out of gas on the highway because it's just pitch black. Like no one's coming for me. Um, so I turn around. Um, and there's like a sign that says the highway number. So I turn on it, and it's actually not the highway itself. It's like a dirt road. So I'm like, oh fuck, what the fuck? So I'm driving, and then I hear this like switch, like this switch, like a wire that I tripped that goes up into the tree, like it like snatched and then went up into the tree. And then my window started getting like my front window started getting pelted with like I don't know what it was, like bullets or something. I really have no idea what it was. And it scared the shit out of me. I turned around. I went to the gas station. up the next road. And there were like marks on my windshield from where I got hit, so it wasn't just like in my head. Cause I was like, this is fucking crazy. Like, people aren't gonna believe me when I tell them this story. So anyways, like I keep driving, and then my maps, my Apple Maps start acting really strange to the point where they're not pulling up anything. Like it won't even show any other kind of establishment other than Circle K's in Waffle Houses, which was a strange combination. But it turns out that Waffle Houses are usually located next to a Circle K, which is strange. So they were only showing Waffle K's and Waffle K's. Um, anyways, so I'm like, okay, well, I'm just gonna keep driving to Philadelphia. Like I don't know what else to do. And then everything on my map, like it's during the daytime, everything on my maps just cuts out completely. Like I can't even look anything up. Like not even a Waffle House, not even a fucking Circle K. I'm in the middle of nowhere. Like on the highway, completely lost. And then all of a sudden, all of a sudden, I get a phone call from somebody that I had met like off of Tinder randomly. They're like, "Hey, are you okay?" And I'm like, "No, I'm lost in the middle of like North Carolina. Like I have no idea where I'm at right now." He's like, "Well, the only thing you can do is either get a map or call the police." And I'm like, "Okay." I hang up, immediately start having a panic attack. And then I call 911. I'm like, "Hey, like I'm having a panic attack." So they're concerned. I'm like, "Hey, I'm like lost. I don't know where I'm at." So eventually a police car shows up and then an ambulance shows up. And the police officer walks around to the front of my car because there's like obviously like fucking bullet marks or like some sort of shit. Because on a side note, my windows, my car windows are bulletproof. Like they just have bulletproof glass when I got them. I don't know. It just is what it is. It just happened that way. He's like, "What the?" Like he looks at me and I look at him and we're both like, "What the fuck?" And then they forced me to get onto into the ambulance, and they start asking me all these questions with like a lie detector thing. Like they like put a like a heart reader on my finger, and they're like asking me series of questions about what I'm doing. And it, and then they took me to like to this hospital, like a psychiatric hospital, and the psychiatric hospital is like as big as my room, and they're like the doors to the rooms, they're only about probably like 4 by 8 feet, like really small, like only with a bed inside of them. And they're like cell doors. Like I thought I was being arrested. I thought I was going to prison. And the entire little complex is like white concrete. Like there's nothing in here. And they hold me like you're not even allowed to interact with a nurse because they sit behind a glass window and monitor you. I was there for like 4 days. And then they let me go. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm just gonna go back to Florida. And and then on the way I'm driving back. And then you know where it says like your carrier, like Verizon or Sprint, etc. My phone like 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 that little thing left the screen and then popped up US Cellular on on my phone. I was like, what the fuck? So I ended up just driving back to Florida. I was like, fuck whatever the fuck is going on out here. I'm just gonna stay where I'm, just stay put.
And what happened after that? That was
That was also in February. So I can't remember which one came first. Actually, I think I got exposed to the chemical. Then I went to that psychiatric hospital. The psychiatric hospital is like where they ran tests on me, like they like took my blood, they like monitored me, everything like that. So it was like it's like a health thing. Like they wanna, you know. So maybe that was like them not being so shitty, but also traumatizing the fuck out of me because I thought I got shot at in the middle of the woods. then all of this other shit happened. So I didn't know what I did. I didn't know what I did wrong, and it was pretty scary. So after that, uh, things were like relatively normal, except like my TV started like talking to me directly and like a very overt way, and just some other weird things that like make me seem mentally unstable. But like I swear on my life that like I have like concrete evidence that I was being like MK Ultra or some shit. And
So that's what I wanted to ask you about. So you mentioned being MK Ultra, and most of us are somewhat familiar with MK Ultra, which was a notorious, illegal, non-consensual CIA experiment to target American and Canadian civilians with mind control and brainwashing and drugs and torture and other things. Everyone should read about it if you haven't. So, what do you mean when you say that you were MK Ultra, and can you tell us about like how that started and what you experienced?
okay, well, well, there's like more backstory involving like a person, but I don't want to like, I don't know. So I'll just tell the story. So I was talking to this is like kind of irrelevant to MK Ultra, but it ties into it. So I was talking to a dude off of Bumble, and he was like, "Hey, like you should come pick me up." Um, and he like gave me gas money. Like I drove out there, and like it's like the really rich area of like where I'm from, so I was like not concerned at all. And he was like walking on the side of the road, like near some houses. I was like, okay, like he just walked out of his house or something. So he gets in my car, and immediately he's like, okay, you need, like, can you let me drive? I was like, no. Um, no, like I don't know you. Like you can't drive my car. And he keeps asking, and I'm a sucker for like any stimulants. And so he's like, do you want Adderall? Like I have Adderall. Like we can literally pull over and snort Adderall. And I was like, well, shit. Like I'm in the car, like nothing that bad can happen. So we pull over, we do the Adderall. He drives to my place. We hang out for like 2 or 3 days. Like he just stays there. It's like completely normal. I go to take him back um to his house, and so I drive, and he can't tell me like where his house is. Like I drive back to the same road where I picked him up from. He tells me to go all the way down to the end and turn around. I'm like, okay, well, he's just keeping, like, saving me time. Then he's like, keep going, keep going. We reach the end of the street. And at that point, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, can you just get out? Can you leave? Like, this isn't cute or funny. And he's like, okay, fine. So he's like, go down this way. So I drive that way. He's like, this house. So I pull into the driveway. He just starts to laugh. He's like, this isn't my house. I'm like, I start yelling at that point because I'm just creeped out. Like get the fuck out of my car type shit. And he's like, okay, fine. So he points down this like to this gravel road. I'm like, okay, so I drive down there, and it's like it's just a gravel road, and it like and like the end of it is in the middle of the woods with like the electrical boxes, shit, like just the middle of the woods. And he's like, get out of your car. And I'm like, no, fuck you, like I'll fucking kill you right here, like I don't give a fuck, get the fuck out of my car. And he's like, okay. And he just gets out of my car and walks into the woods. I was like, weird. That's just weird. And I didn't even I didn't know what to do. I was like, maybe like the whole thing was weird. So um anyways, I just leave, I go home, I start working at a new job. Maybe like a couple weeks later, and turns out he's working there too, which is like not even remotely close to where um like I dropped him off at. And of course, like there's something wrong with my brain, so we start hanging. Like I invite him to my house. I'm like, maybe he was like living in his car and he was like embarrassed or something, like I don't know. So we're hanging out, and we start hanging out a lot, and we're watching like this TV series. And the TV show like starts talking to us in a way that like we were both looked at each other, we're like, what the fuck? Like this is really strange. And yada yada yada. And then that's sort of the time when I started having some like weird magical things happen to me. And also when I like summoned a demon, um, theoretically, metaphorically. Anyways, this dude started coming into my apartment through a window that he had unlocked while I wasn't like in the room. But like I did summon a legitimate demon. So my old apartment, it was shaped like a seance, like it had 5 rooms, and I figured I was like, if I just conjure up enough energy, I can literally summon like some kind of entity into this place. So, anyways, I do that. I'm fucking with the lights. I was harboring a lot of anger at the time. There was just like an intense amassment of negative energy in this place. So things start moving around. Um, weird ways. I hear like a man's voice in my ear. Like I'm standing in the middle of the room, like nobody was in there. I hear like a man's voice whisper in my ear. Weird touches. I would always keep the lights on because that's just how I am. I don't like the dark. But one time I was like sitting in the dark for some reason, talking about this demon, and the demon would like speak to me intuitively. So it told me that it was God, and that we needed to go to space, and just some I can't really remember, but anyways, I was sitting in the dark, and then like I got like a scratch out of nowhere, like on my leg, and scratch, and I was like, what the fuck? And it stayed there. It wasn't just like me imagining me being scratched. And then I also would get like bruises. Like I felt like I would be hit, and then I would watch like a bruise come up onto my skin and then disappear again. And so I like challenged this demon. I was like, hey, like I bet you can't like steal my soul, etc., etc. And then my life started going really, really bad. Then that's also the time when I started getting MK Ultra. Like my computer became hacked. Um, and like it would like move on its own. I was in some kind of I was in like mental health related Discord servers, more so for like antisocial tendencies. I hate like putting that out there because I don't really identify with that anymore, but at the time that's how I was feeling. And so my computer like so I went to go on Discord, and like the whole thing blipped out. Then it like opened a server that was like I was the only person in it, and it had like channels and shit that was like already set up, and it like said like this is the place for you to like put all your thoughts in. I was like weirded out. I was like, what the fuck? Like no, like this is like some kind of trap. And this is like a month or two after I had went into DC, I had experienced this. Um and so I just kind of avoided my computer altogether. And then um like I would watch TV on or like YouTube channels, my smart TV like lectures, and it became to the point where I was convinced that somehow like the CIA was intercepting like the YouTube channel and using some kind of graphic card to make it look like the person whoever I was watching like was talking to me, but without it being like interface complete. I don't know how to explain that, but essentially like this person like I would talk to the TV and it would respond in real time with relevant information. Then I started to read like tarot cards, and that's kind of irrelevant. I'm kind of getting off track here because it's so much
No,
information.
that's a great start. So a few things I want to get into. So you mentioned that this person was coming into your house through an unlocked window. You're talking about the man that you met on Tinder, and then he came to your house, and when he was there, he unlocked a window, and then he started coming back into your house.
Yeah, because a neighbor had seen him. Like a neighbor had told my mom, who had like went there to like feed my cat or something. I told her that she saw this like really tall guy in all black like at my window one night. And I was like, this like it could only be him. So after that I kind of like amped up the security, but I was always like very paranoid that he would like hurt me or kill me or do something like that. Um yeah.
Well, yeah, sounds like a dangerous situation for sure. But I'm glad that nothing else came of it. So, with the demon that you said you summoned, now, did you intentionally summon the demon? Like, did you use like a magical spell or ritual or something to summon it?
I kind of did a ritual. Like I had like It sounds kind of stupid, but it worked. I would like turn on the like I went and turned on all the lights in the place in my apartment, and I like I was like pulling tarot cards and stuff. And then I decided I was like I have to turn out all the lights and and sit outside for a moment. So I turned off like because I had every single light in the place on. So I turned off all the lights and I sit outside for like 15 minutes. I go like when I walk inside, my living room smelled like sulfur. Like it smelled really, really bad. And I was like, "Oh fuck." Um so that was the extent of the ritual. It wasn't like I did anything specific. It's just like the intention of it was enough.
Okay, so you had the intention to summon the demon, and you could tell it was there because you could smell the sulfur. Could you see the demon in any way?
Um once once like my cat's eyes turned all black, um and I like grabbed her and I like shook her. I was like, "What the fuck?" And and it her eyes went back to normal. Um and this like the activity went on for like months and months, until about July of the next year. So from from December to July, this thing was like ruining my existence. Like I every time I like towards the end, when I would go to sleep, I would have these really really vivid like nightmares. I started hearing like knocks on the walls every like going around the room. Like it was like 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 walking around the room knocking on each wall. And I saw a like there was like shadow on the wall from where like the sun was hitting my blinds, and a face like a side profile of a man with like a really long nose appeared. I sat up and it like I looked at it. I looked at it for like like 30 seconds, and it just like receded back into the to like the where how it was before. It was so bizarre. And then that day that happened, I felt like I was possessed. Like I can't explain it. I was conscious. I felt like I was possessed. Like I was not in control of my body. Like I remember I like got really kind of rigid, and then I sat up like in a weird way, like a very like straight like military kind of way. And I like put on my shoes and I left the house and I like drove around looking for a church to go to. And then I moved. I moved. So I don't nothing ever happened with it, but um after that it was strange. I'm not sure like I know it was somewhat real because it like left physical marks on me and some of the smells. But like it makes me question my sanity to an extent. If the lights were on, it would be very like mischievous and like move things around. And then if I turned all the lights off, it would like scratch me. And So I kind of like looked into like what demon it could have been. I know the name of it, not saying it. But that shit was too much for me to deal with, and I had summoned it for like I don't even know why I did that. Um, but I bet it like I had this concept of like the Book of Job, and this is probably why I ended up getting possessed. But I was like, if I like summon a demon and be like, oh, like I bet you can't like take my soul or possess me, etc., etc., then I would get like some kind of payback from God, which is totally a corrupt concept, which I deeply regret. But I'm probably going to hell. But it was such a strange, bizarre thing, and then everything in my life just fell apart instantly. Um, so yeah, and so I don't know if that was just like my perception or and I have a conspiracy theory like maybe these demons aren't necessarily from hell. Maybe they're like interdimensional kind of alien sentiences that like interact with us, but regardless, they're very evil. I would not mess with one again.
Yeah, I agree. But when you say everything in your life fell apart instantly, do you mean after you summoned the demon? At that point, everything in your life fell apart?
Not after I summoned it, but after I like challenged it to get my soul.
Right. So after you summoned the demon and after the interaction you had with it, everything in your life, like I'm assuming you mean like your job, your family, your money, things like that, all went to crap?
Yeah. So I have a really, really bad relationship with my family. So I basically, as soon as I like said it, I got a call from my mom. She was screaming at me. Next day, I get into it, the next day is Christmas Eve, and I get into a car accident, and then they hold me in the hospital. I miss Christmas. I start getting MK Ultra. I get hit by like some kind of nerve chemical. I get taken to a psychiatric hospital. Um, Everything just fell apart immediately. And it felt like it was like if it's just like if you kill yourself, you're gonna then it gets your soul essentially, and it's like some kind of test where you have to like go through literally every single bad thing that could ever happen to you, and if you just have faith or something, then you just keep living and you'll be fine, and eventually like something's got to give. But I'm telling you, every single thing that could go wrong went wrong.
Right. Well, that kind of makes sense because there's something called demonic oppression. So people talk about demonic possession, which is when you are possessed by a demon, like an exorcist or whatever. But demonic oppression is when you've attracted the attention of a demon and it's oppressing you by, malevolently interfering with your life in exactly the kind of ways that you're describing, where everything goes wrong for you. That's exactly what demonic oppression sort of is described as. So that kind of
Yeah.
makes. And I do think, yeah, whenever you make contact with something infernal like that, especially consciously with some kind of bargain in mind, these are the kind of things that happen, or worse generally. Was there a way that it ended, or were you eventually able to get out of the situation somehow? Did things get better, or did you find some solution?
After a few months, I started after a few months it got too intense for me. I was like, this needs to stop. Like I need it out of my house. And I like got sage. I like blessed. I made like holy water. I was saying like Hail Marys and all this sorts of things, and it went away for a little while. And then it came back like even stronger than before. And then that's when I moved. Because then I started having night terrors with very, very scary dreams. Dreams like where I was having strokes and I could literally feel myself like having a stroke and dying. It got too intense and I left, and it's been better since then. Like ever since I moved away, I felt like I kind of detached my energy from it. 'Cause it was stuck to that place somehow. I
So,
let it inside essentially, and it got up there.
and so, do you feel the demon is still oppressing you or with you now, or do you feel like it's gone?
I feel like it's gone. Like it's gone. It took like 7-8 months, but I feel like things are finally over. Um, so it's good. It feels like a relief, and it gave me like the whole experience itself gave me a sense of like, and it gave me like an enemy to fight against, and it helped me not feel suicidal. I used to be chronically suicidal, and now I'm like, I'm not a fucking quitter, you know?
Right. Well, that's good that you're staying strong and feeling better. I'm going to open this up for audience questions and participation soon, but I might want to ask a few more questions first, and I have more questions regardless. So you feel you were exposed to some kind of orange gas in this one experiment. You met the strange person who behaved strangely and broke into your house. You saw a television talk to you and so forth, and you feel that you were possessed or summoned by a demon, possessed or encountered a demon. Um, were there any other parts of this sort of story or narrative that you feel is important to include in this, introduction to what you went through?
Um, Nothing like there are other things, but nothing that is too important. A lot of the happenstances, especially with the technology and the experiences with the quote unquote MK Ultra, have been very subtle, very hard to explain. So I'll keep it at that.
Okay. And you mentioned that you've been into the psychiatric hospital and so forth. If you are willing to talk about it, are you currently taking any, medication or anything?
Um, I take like an antidepressant.
Okay, but not anything for, and are you still experiencing things like this on a day-to-day basis, or is this kind of,
No, no, they stopped. It just stopped.
so it was only for a specific discrete part of your life that you were experiencing these kind of things, not really before and not really after?
Before that, I there was another thing that like landed me in the mental hospital because like no one believed me when I told like my friend, my best friend at the time, like believed me. But so when I was in college, um these professors that I was in like a learning community, so like I had uh three classes that were like intertwined, and we would have to write like massive essays and take tests for all three subjects. These professors started like I don't know how to explain it, but it was like um it would like they would like say things like it felt like they were like looking through my search history. It felt like they were like making fun of me, or like but in a weird like subliminal way, so that sounds like schizophrenia or some shit. But it, like I don't really believe in like this concept of like schizophrenic delusions being like people are actually like communicating with you in some kind of subversive way. I don't think that's real. I think that sometimes things happen like this to people, and it's strange, but they would like get up front of the class and like target me and like talk to me directly, and I never said anything in that class. Like they would like point out things that I had typed on the computer that I didn't even publish to the class canvas. It just felt like I was being personally attacked the whole entire semester, and it was just really intense, and it made me like fucking like feel like shit about myself. Um, so that also happened, but that was in 2018.
Well, it certainly sounds like you've been through a lot of very difficult and hard times. So I'm sorry that you had to go through all that, and I'm glad you're doing better. I do thank you for sharing your experiences with us. And I have more questions, but at this point, I think I'll open it up. Is there anyone in the audience who has a question or comment for Jinx?
I got one.
Go ahead.
Hey, thanks. You know, it's funny you mentioned, not funny in a hilarious sense, but interesting that you mentioned about a demonic attack. I had one, had a few recently this year myself. The one that stuck out the most, I think, was meant to attack my sense of self-importance as I reflect on it. So I'm not feeling as bad about it. But like it involved me basically like having a night paralysis where it'd be, to explain that, it'd be where I'd be sleeping and I'd wake up, but my body couldn't physically move. And I could tell that there were presences in the room. I think at this point there were three. I believe they were succubi, in which at one point I had turned to my side and I could feel as if I was actually being raped. I
Mm.
thought was really wrong. So yeah, they're definitely not something to mess with in a casual sense. Because I want to say previously that day, I had um I had asked Lilith help assistance with something, but I believe I did it in such a way that it was very offensive, and it hits on a couple things that she doesn't like people that are very self-important, and people that are very prideful or prudish for that matter. And I
Mm.
had basically like all three. So I kind of don't blame her for doing that in a sense, but they do exact quite a punishment if you go to this um, spiritual thing without due care to that. So yeah, just keep that in mind next time if you want to get into that.
Um, I've had sleep paralysis situations like that as well, where I'll wake up and not often, but one time I had woken up and I had sleep paralysis. And I heard like jingling bells, and then I could hear something like run across the carpet and like sit on my chest, and it was very very scary. But yeah, it's really nothing. I didn't really believe in anything like that previously. Like I didn't take it seriously. I still consider myself to be like a materialist, but with like differing views, I guess. Um, but that's kind of where I want to get into like, um, well, we're doing feedback right now, so yeah.
Yeah, if everyone just make sure your mic is closed, please. Go ahead, Jinx.
Ah, oh god.
Jinx.
Okay, so this is where I kind of want to get into perception. So so I want to get into like Jungian concepts. So there's this kind of like, what could a demon be? Like, is it psychological? Is it me having some kind of psychosis or spiritual hallucinations? But regardless of the legitimacy of my experiences or other experiences, I think it can be kind of traced back to some Jungian concepts. So I like copy and pasted some stuff into a Google document to like make my point. So, according to Jungian training analyst Murray Stein, Jung related theological and psychological constructs using three tenets. So, one, theological elements such as God can be interpreted to refer to psychological concepts. Um, and blah, blah, blah. So, everything can be like, may or may not be you like dissociating from yourself and having some kind of experience like this. Now, me being scratched is like there's no explanation for that. But so thus proceeding by tenet number one, Jung interpreted Yahweh as an archaic form of the self, Job as the ego, and Satan as the principle of individuation. Jung interprets the evolution of the God image portrayed in the Old and New Testament as a process of psychological development. In the book of Job, the archaic self is promoted to develop towards consciousness by the more conscious ego. a process attended by dreams and prophecies. The self enters ego consciousness, in quotations, the incarnation of God in Jesus, followed by the emergence of transcendent function, where the Holy Ghost comes to the disciples. So I think that's a really interesting concept to just like touch on. How it could just be a part of our psyche, like manifesting itself maybe into reality, or at least having some weird level of psychosis. But I think that it is a process of individuation, and I deeply relate to that because ever since that happened, I do feel as if I have become a stronger person. Um, my values, my sense of well-being has been vitalized. Um, and I don't struggle with chronic suicidalness anymore, which is something I never thought would happen. Um, and then, so if you also take like the Jungian kind of concepts and apply that to ritual, like where I had a ritual where I summoned a demon, I kind of wanted to refer to Levian Satanism. So I just copy and pasted a bunch of things I wanted to read off. So this is from Wikipedia. The ritual is referred to as an intellectual decompression chamber where skepticism and disbelief are willfully suspended, thus allowing the magicians to fully express their mental and emotional needs, holding back nothing regarding their deepest feelings and desires. So it's basically psychodramatic catharsis. So where you perform a ritual, it's more of like your subconscious interacting with like what you're doing. And I also have a quote by Joseph Campbell saying, "A ritual is the enactment of a myth, and participating in the ritual, you are participating in the myth. And since myth is a projection of the depth of wisdom of the psyche, by participating in a ritual, participating in the myth, you are being, as it were, put in accordance with that wisdom, which is the wisdom that is inherent within you anyhow. Your consciousness is being reminded of the wisdom of your own life. I think ritual is terribly important, and that's something that I really deeply relate to. I don't know if I'm like intelligible right now, so
Yeah, you're definitely intelligible. Absolutely. And, I think I kind of structured the interview somewhat backwards, but is there anything else that you want to cover, possibly from the topics that you put in the announcement before and we can always do another episode if there's anything else we want to get into. But
yeah, if you want to end it short, I have like a bunch more, but it's not like super important right now. But I kind of rambled a lot more than I expected to.
and we're not out of time. Like you can, if you have more things you want to go through, you can. But I'm just because of the way I structured the interview, I'm not sure what to ask next. Like, do you want to go into? You mentioned the Book of Job. Do you want to perhaps talk more about what the significance of that was, or?
Well, the Book of Job, the significance of that was mainly related to me being like, oh, like you can't take my soul and expecting to get money at the end, and just being kind of like conned by a demon. More so in the sense how it relates to what I quoted from this article saying that Job represents the ego, whereas Satan represents the principle of individuation in Yahweh as the form of the self. So how that relates to each other is I've grown as a person. Like I feel like I conquered my own demons, and I think that the Jungian concepts of individuation and taking mythology and breaking it down into psychological functions within the mind is very true. Um, the way I structured this is really strange. It kind of branches off into like media pollution, but I also want to talk about like modern shamanism and the synchronicity, but that can be for another time.
We can get into anything you want. So, Jungian psychology, what do you mean by media pollution?
So media pollution or like information pollution. Um, so we're constantly like bombarded by different sorts of media stimuli from anything from like TikTok, or like driving down the road and being bombarded with advertising. Like our society today has so like insane amounts of stimuli just being projected right into you constantly, constantly, constantly. Um, so like how does this like affect our modern perception of like mythology and some of the how we interpret individuation in the psyche? And then um and that's like an open question. Like I'm not really sure the answer to that, but um so that kind of brings me to the psychology of modern shamanism. And but this is something I do with synchronicity. So the brain essentially pre-processes stimuli before we're conscious of it. And this has been exhibited in multiple studies. So in one study, they flashed subliminal, not even I can't remember if it's subliminal. They flash subliminal messaging of death-related terms at people and saw what aspects of their brains lit up and like try to see if they were conscious of what it was versus when they're showing words that were not related to death, and your brain registers it without you being conscious of it. So what does that mean about things that are brought to our conscious awareness? Like when you're driving down the road and you see, oh look, there's that thing that I've been talking about for weeks right on the road. What a synchronicity, right? So um, you can kind of use that for individuation. Like you can use modern stimuli like advertisements, whatever, to bring about like what you need to do, how you feel, what do you think, that may not be completely conscious. But if you have a sort of meta awareness of your own conscious perceptions, it can kind of lead you on a journey. So like what is shamanism? So let me read this thing. So it says that because of their ability to travel between our world and that of the greater spiritual universe, a shaman is typically someone who shares prophecies and oracle messages with those who may need to hear them. These messages may be something simple and individually focused, but more often than not, they are things that will impact an entire community. In some cultures, a shaman is consulted for their insight and guidance before any major decision, etc., etc. So, if you take this idea, this concept of synchronicity, and you pay attention to the things that you notice about yourself, and you keep in mind that your brain is aware of what you're seeing, feeling, tasting, touching before you're conscious of it, and you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose of consciousness coming from an evolutionary point of view? And I think it's mainly for like decision making. I'm not really one, like I don't have enough knowledge to speculate about the use of consciousness. But I think it's really interesting to speculate about what symbols and signs can your mind deliver to you, a little package that you may not even notice. And you know how people have Freudian slips and kind of say things. I don't know how to explain it, but I think it means something. I also have another quote. This is totally not making any sense, but whatever. So here's a quote from Man and His Symbols, which is by Carl Jung. Man, as we realize, if we reflect for a moment, never perceives anything fully or comprehends anything completely. He can see, hear, touch, and taste, but how far he sees, how well he sees, what his touch tells him, and what he tastes depend on the number and quality of his senses. These limit his perception of the world around him. So everything is a symbol in your consciousness, but it can also lead you down a path of like minor psychosis or like a weird symbiosis between sanity and insanity. But this is how I've gotten to the point of where I'm like not depressed anymore. It's so difficult to explain because it's really wavy. I don't know if anything I'm saying makes any sense. So feel free to ask me questions to explain myself further.
Well, I just want to ask, is anyone in the audience who has any questions at this point or comments?
Yeah, and I would say like a lot of us have had pretty weird paranormal experiences, and yours definitely is very paranormal. But you know, I definitely feel like what you experienced absolutely happened. Um, One thing I did want to say was that you said earlier when you were talking about the demon, because you're like, what is a demon anyway? But like some sort of like intelligence that's like, you know, like permeating the field basically. I think you said it different, but you said something like that, and I really resonate with that because I believe that they are our ideas of like angels and demons essentially are just like these non-corporeal intelligence that just exist, and they just like can, you know, we can't see or perceive them, but on some level they can connect to us and interface with us.
Exactly, yeah. I don't maybe they exist in like the like vibrational fields or just the energy. I don't know what it is, but that's really what I think demons and these angels are. They're just massments of sentient energy somehow, some way. And I I try to always clarify, like, I believe in these sorts of paranormal things, but I'm still like a materialist. So I just think we haven't fully like unraveled the mysteries of the universe. Like, who are we to say that we have all the answers and this is how something is? I think everything is physical, but they just may not be perceivable.
Is there anyone else who perhaps had a question or comment?
I was gonna bring up something about media pollution.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, tied also with some magical stuff you were talking about as well. Um, have you read anything regarding Bernays?
No, I haven't.
Okay, yeah, this guy absolutely pivotal to the rise of consumerism and how it is that we're marketed to as a
Wait,
people.
is that the guy? Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt. Is that the guy who like started public relations?
Yeah, so that's one. He got women to smoke by having them parade as a group in this one event in New York. Um, I forget what else he did, but I think he was related to Sigmund Freud in some respect.
Mm.
He died within living memory as well. I know he was on some kind of show in his later ages, but he was pivotal in marketing and public relations field thereabouts. And I've some years ago I read one of his books, and it was just a very scary kind of concept of the idea of like you're not necessarily organically making your own thoughts. It's just that through various methods of the media, appeals to authority, using celebrities, things of that nature. Um, they kind of inject it into you, and then you organically feel that, oh, I need to go buy this thing to achieve this kind of feeling or this kind of outcome. And even though it's something that they put into your head in that sense. And in some ways, I've also heard, not necessarily from him, but I've heard from someone else that the brands that you see out there are like little sigils of some sort in the way that they interact with your conscious awareness when you look at them, and the type of feelings and actions they evoke when you look at a particular brand and you think of the various associations with it. So I think those are some good avenues to look into if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah. You must have seen the Century of the Self off of YouTube because I've watched that as well. I think Bernays was Sigmund Freud's nephew, I believe. But yeah, this is something that it's really hard for me to like put into words exactly my kind of like theoretical take on magic and awareness, I guess. But yeah,
Can I say something?
sure.
Okay, so I was interested in this thing you said about like paying attention to synchronicity can lead you into this, like, I think you called it a symbiosis of sanity and insanity. Like, do you think that's a good thing? Like, do you think there's a benefit to a little bit of insanity, or like is that something that should be avoided?
Um, well, it really depends on who you are and what type of environment you exist within, because I don't think that mental illness is psychosis is commonly classified as mental illness. I don't think mental illness really exists. I think it's just a mental illness only exists in the context of whatever society you exist within. So that means, like, say if you're not necessarily like fitting in with this the standard like behavior or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily mean you are and what you perceive and how you think is inherently wrong or if you're inherently sick or anything. So, for instance, Carl Jung actually went down this path,
The
and he
Red
wrote
Book?
the Red Book, and he was fully functional while having these spiritual shamanic experiences. Um, he
I
was
mean,
like,
the Red Book is like really polarizing because a lot of people see it as like that's like the pinnacle of Jung's work, but a lot of people see it as like, oh, Jung went full schizo. He just went nuts.
well, well, honestly, the thing is like my perspective on it is like he really didn't even go full schizo. A lot of it is just metaphorical, like prophecies of his own psyche. And I say that because he was a fully functioning individual while he was writing the Red Book and experiencing these things. Like he was like going like teaching class and like going to meetings and doing all this stuff, and he was normal. Um, I think that some people get more entranced and lose their functionability within their own society, than others. So I think it's just depends on the person and how well you can handle it. It's dangerous because like the more you pay attention, the more you have like a transcendental perspective on your own consciousness and like what stimuli stands out to you, and if you analyze it, um, I just lost my train of thought, but it can make you go a little insane, but you just need to have a balance of where you kind of like see like, oh, like maybe I did this like unconsciously, but I perceive it as an accident. But in reality, you're trying to tell yourself something or communicate something to other people, especially. So, like microaggressions. Um, like some people have like these, people say like unconscious microaggressions or consider them microaggressions, but people are hardly aware of them. But what these things, they're meant to communicate how you're feeling with other people. Like you can always kind of like you can know when someone else is having a Freudian slip, but you're never really sure when you're having a Freudian slip. It just takes a certain level of awareness to understand yourself, I think.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry if I feel subconscious, I don't know.
No, this was great. Thank you very much, and thanks for the questions. Does anyone else have a question or comment?
Yes, Jinx. No, I actually just want to have something to say about what I've been hearing, and it's really cool to hear from Jinx, because it's really cool to hear from someone who also, has mental health problem, or mental illness, and found their way through to the truth of finding. So it's really cool to see someone, with the same interests. And um, I, as far as Carl Jung, I mean, it seems like they kind of just they took what they needed to create an industry, and they left the rest behind, because it's bad for repeat business to actually fix people. But the way to be fixed when it comes to mental, when it comes to psychology, is to go to the young stuff. That's how you recreate yourself. So I'm complimenting you. It's very cool.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and I just want to say I know you're still relatively new to the server, but the kind of experiences that you talked about here although they might be relatively uncommon, in general, they're quite common here. Most of us, or many of us here, have some variation of the same kind of experience, including myself. So you found your way to the right place, and we can all certainly relate, and everyone's experience is sort of valuable for a lot of us, because we share similar experiences, and we'll get to talk about that more as time goes on. But for now, I want to thank you again for sharing your experience, and everyone for attending and listening, and for your questions. And I just want to say, Jinx, do you have perhaps a final message or a takeaway, something you'd like people to take away who listen to this in the live audience or later on our YouTube channels?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, in that case, again, thank you so much. We can do another podcast in the future. If anyone else would ever like to do a podcast on any subject, just send me a DM, and keep an eye on the announcements channel for our upcoming special events that happen almost every day. And please follow, subscribe to our different YouTube, BitChute, and SoundCloud channels in the RT podcast channel. That being said, thank you very much, Jinx. Appreciate it. And thanks, everyone. Yeah. God bless. And why don't we all jump up now to the pub or the video chat and crash the party up there. Thanks, guys.